Hello, hello. Did you see that headline? Politicians face risks in telling of depression. And I was just looking at some of the comments here in the scroll. Thank you all for being here, by the way. Really appreciate it. The thumbnail for this conversation said, "It's time to end the stigma." And I see that Michelle Moore says, in answer to the headline, yes, it is time to end the stigma for everyone. P.S. Let's divorce the mental health bludgeon from the grotesque mass killing phenomena. I totally get what she's saying, and I agree with it, because each and every time there's a mass shooting, and there are far too many of them, the first thing that we hear is that someone had X, Y, and Z in terms of a diagnosis of mental health, and it may be accurate reporting, and it's got to be a part of the story, but it's got to be presented along with data that show that 99.99%, 9999% of those who are suffering from mental health afflictions are not mass murderers. But I think what it does is it makes more difficult exactly what I'm talking about today, which is to have open conversations about individuals with mental illness. And I'm hoping that John Fetterman's acknowledgement of dealing with clinical depression and being admitted for that is going to be a new milestone for having the dialogue. I got ahead of myself. Thank you, Parks Casino. Join me now and get the thrill of the casino in the palm of your hand with the Bet Parks Casino and Sportsbook app. Hey, I'm not going to lie to you. The Eagles, the Birds, Philadelphia not covering in the big game, that burned me. But man, it was fun to have skin in the game. Play real casino games for real money now. Slots, blackjack, roulette, table games. Get them all with the BetParks Casino and Sportsbook app, the only casino and sportsbook app that I recommend. New users get up to a $750 bonus plus 500 free spins when you sign up now. All your favorite casino games right in the palm of your hand. You got to be 21 or older in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, look, it was nothing personal, but during the course of the Pennsylvania Senate race, which I talked about extensively, I was very critical of John Fetterman, and I was critical of him not only on the issues and the whole primary against Connor Lamb. I thought that Lamb was really is really a gifted guy and would have made a great senator for Pennsylvania, just like purple in the truest sense of the color in terms of what I'm looking for, and a solid citizen, impressed with his credentials, yada, yada, yada. As the campaign then progressed and we found out about Lieutenant Governor Fetterman having a stroke right before the primary, I was critical of the fact that his campaign was not immediately forthcoming. When they were forthcoming to a degree, they didn't discuss the underlying cardiomyopathy, which necessitated a defibrillator. There was that incident with the NBC reporter where she said she believed that he wasn't comprehending her small talk, and everybody said that's ableist, and they were very critical of her, but I was not, because I thought, we needed to know exactly what we were dealing with in terms of a Senate candidate. It's a big job. And then Fetterman so clearly was running out the clock by not debating Dr. Oz because, he wanted to rack up votes. He was ahead in the polls and he wanted as many people to vote and therefore any damage from a debate to be minimal. By the way, do I have to say this? Not that Oz was any prize. He was a carpetbagger, I'm sure. Nobody asks this. I wish a media outlet would go. Remember all the attention to his New Jersey mansion and that he really wasn't living in Bryn Athyn in Montgomery County? No one's picking up that ball now, I guess because nobody cares. But wouldn't it be interesting to know how many days is he spending in Pennsylvania these days? And remember, they looked at his social media and they saw he was still living in New Jersey. I digress. Anyway, my point is, I think I'm perfectly suited to now talk about Fetterman and to praise him. And to praise him for his willingness to, acknowledge what he's dealing with, because we need mental health champions right now. not lost on me, and I'm going to say all of this on CNN today. I can't wait. There's so many things today that I want to get off my chest. Today is one of those days. There are many days. I'm not going to, not going to BS you. I always wanted to have a television program of my own. All of the years of guest hosting for everyone else, in the same way that I guest hosted Bill O'Reilly's radio show for 5 years and thought, why don't I have a syndicated program? I clearly can do this. And at the same time, I was guest hosting 5 years for Chris Matthews on Hardball, getting good ratings. Why aren't I, the host of a show of my own? And of course, ego plays a lot in this. And finally, thank you, Jeff Zucker. 9 years ago or thereabouts, I got my own program on CNN, and I've, been here ever since. But it's a grind because I invest a lot of hours Monday through Friday in really trying to deliver good radio content. And by the end of the week, my ass is dragging. And getting up to do a Saturday show is a lot of work. I worked all into the night last night after getting up at 4:30 to do radio. I know I'm sounding like a complainer. What's the point, Michael? The point is, on a day like today, I relish having access to these airwaves for the following reason. I want to talk about Fetterman, but I want to do it in a different way than everybody else is talking about. I want to couch this in a conversation about mental health for adolescents, because this is the CDC report that came out this week that has alarming data. I mean, really frightening data in it. 42% of American high school students experience persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. That 42% was 28% a decade ago. And because I talk about this all the time, I tie this to social media and smartphones and technology. Not that I'm a Luddite here, but it's just an inescapable conclusion. That's not the most alarming stat in all of this. The most alarming stats, the percentage of those adolescents who have seriously considered attempting suicide. The total is 22%. The number is 30% among females. A third. How about this? Actually made a suicide plan. 24%, let's call it a quarter, of females, American high school girls, have made a suicide plan. We have a really serious problem in this country. It does not get discussed. There are a lot of impediments. We just don't treat physical and brain or mental health the same. And insurance is terrible. You heard those phone calls maybe yesterday on my program after I said that insurance makes this difficult and furthers the stigma. I mean, it's a complicated issue. It's a complicated issue, one that I've discussed extensively on air, and into the fold now comes John Fetterman, whom I criticized back in the primary and the general, but today I'm praising, absolutely praising, because, this headline from page 1 of the New York Times today, politicians face risks in telling of depression. Yesterday at Smerconish.com, my poll question was the following: has depression been sufficiently stigmatized such that it is not a political liability? 18,000 people voted on this, and 73% said no, it has not been sufficiently destigmatized. And I think they're probably right. But by having the conversation about Fetterman, hopefully we are allowing more people to step out of the shadows, allowing society to see so many are afflicted, and most importantly, we are giving hope. We are giving hope to the quarter of American girls in high school who've made a suicide plan. That's what this is all about. And so that's what I'm going to, I said a lot of this off the cuff yesterday on radio, but, I've now had opportunity to pen my thoughts and to deliver this, I hope, in a cogent fashion on television today. So that's what I want to do. And I will tell you this, the first words out of my mouth in my commentary are going to be, thank you, John Fetterman. Thank you, John Fetterman. And then I'm going to lay out, I think, like, full disclosure, and maybe it'll give me more credibility to praise him, is to talk about how critical of him I was during the course of the campaign, and then to work through some of the data, and to make some of the points that I've just made here. God forbid, here's something else. God forbid someone in your orbit gets cancer. People rush to raise GoFundMe money. They bake cakes. They help take care of the children. But if the affliction is anxiety and depression, many will shun even those they know, and that's if the illness is made public at all. Insurance coverage is often not equitable. Many mental health providers refuse the paperwork of participation, leaving people to scramble for scarce treatment resources, and too many go untreated. Maybe John Fetterman can change that. Maybe he can become the face of mental health, the epidemic from which we're all 1 degree of separation. Yeah, I can't wait to say this. Cannot wait to say this. So I'm going to deliver that commentary today. Hold on. I wanted to tell you something else. Oh, then I'm going to have the CDC's person responsible for that study, Dr. Kathleen Ethier, to talk about the mental health epidemic for our kids, tethered with the conversation about the commentary about Fetterman. My car is one of 369,000 that has been recalled. Only when you drive a Tesla and it's recalled, you don't take it to the shop. As Elon Musk says, it's a software update. This whole autonomous driving subject is something that I'm eager to discuss, and I have the right guest in Dr. Missy Cummings being my guest today. By the way, 2 for 2 on female guests so far, 3 for 3 because Valerie Borline from the Wall Street Journal will be my guest on the very latest pertaining to the Alec Murdaugh trial in South Carolina. Guy's clearly a liar, right? He's clearly a liar. Is he a murderer? I thought, and I know that not all of you are able to pay the close attention to this trial that I am, but I thought what was most impressive in the prosecution of Alec Murdaugh, because the prosecution has now rested its case, was the triangulation of the cell phone records and the OnStar records of his vehicle. And if none of that makes any sense to you, that's okay. It puts him where he said he wasn't at the time of the murder. Now, you don't have guns. There are 2 guns used. You don't have the guns. You don't have DNA per se. He lived on the property, but there's not blood on him. There's a lot that's missing in this case, but it is a damn tight circumstantial case. You don't have an eyewitness, but you can piece it all together, I think, quite effectively. And then my friend Dr. Brian Rosenwald, who authored the book Talk Radio's America, and me, I said in my novel Talk, still for sale, by the way, on the Smerch page, signed versions. It just occurred to me, I don't think anybody ever stepped forward with the Willy Wonka TC version. As far as I know, no one ever claimed that prize. Anyway, Brian Rosenwald then wrote a work of nonfiction, and we both see, the destructive nature of the polarized media in similar fashion. How many times have you heard me say? That the polarized media today is the equivalent of the pro wrestling that I grew up watching as a kid? Well, this lawsuit by Dominion, the manufacturer of the voting machines, against Fox News, is exhibit blanking A of everything that I've been saying for years. They knew, the executives and the hosts at Fox knew that it was BS. Everything that was being said on their airwaves about the overturning of the election as it pertained to Dominion. And yet they kept doing it. And why were they giving, even though they were going back and forth among themselves, Laura Ingraham to Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson. Sidney Powell is a bit nuts. Rupert Murdoch himself. This is really crazy stuff. Brett Baer says he acknowledges that there is absolutely no evidence of fraud. I mean, they all recognized the bogus nature of what was being said on their airwaves, and yet they let it continue. And why? Because of greed and a fear that Newsmax and other conservative outlets were going to steal their base. It is, no matter what happens with the Dominion suit, what's involved, what's contained in this motion for summary judgment, and I should say a word about that too, but even if Dominion were to lose the lawsuit, which I don't think they will, but it's an actual malice standard. So it's a very high standard, a very high bar. But even if they were to lose the lawsuit against Fox News, the point is, through sworn deposition testimony, texts, and emails, we know what the Fox people were saying behind closed doors, that it was all bullshit, including Rupert Murdoch himself. And yet they were giving heft to it, right? And why were they doing that? Because they wanted to protect. I mean, Tucker Carlson at one point says the stock price is down. So you know I'm going to address this today too. It's the Smerconish.com newsletter, and right now on my website as our must read of the day. I don't often do this. Normally it's a news story. This motion for summary judgment is posted as the must read of the day. And by the way, a motion for summary judgment doesn't often get filed by a plaintiff, right? It usually, before you get to trial, gets filed at the close of discovery by a defendant. And the defendant goes to the court and they say, Your Honor, they haven't met their burden. They can't meet their burden. Dismiss this case now. In this case, Dominion believes they've assembled such an airtight case on liability against Fox that it's Dominion asking for summary judgment. Take it from a plaintiff's lawyer, okay? We plaintiffs don't often get to file, because we don't have the basis for doing so, motions for summary judgment. I remember doing one once in federal court that was effective. The case resolved after my motion for summary judgment was filed. It's a story for another day, and probably based on the strength of that. All right. Well, I'm in a pretty good place. You know, I've got a lot of things that I'm eager to say, and I thank you all so much for hearing me out on this. So we're only seeing a portion of the brief. So much of it has been redacted, says Kiki R. Kiki, I don't know why that's the case. That's really unusual. I don't know why portions of this are missing, but it's not like, you know, a FOIA request of the government. Look at all this. Look how much you are seeing. I can only imagine what's not there. William Mosley says, nice mix. William, we strive for a mix. You know, I'm not obligated to give you the very latest on every news story of the day. There's some reflection involved in terms of the subject matter that I get to put on a Saturday morning surrounded by a good team. So, Gary, we have the tech to make crashless cars. I mean, I think you mean like cars that don't crash. We do. And this is a horrible thing to say, but maybe the accidents and even the deaths that have occurred so far in the long run, on a cost-benefit analysis, I shouldn't even say that, should I? You don't want anybody to die, obviously, but in the end, I think we're all going to be a hell of a lot safer from the technology. All right, thank you so much. I've got to go get my noggin powdered. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Give TC some play on TC After Dark, please. I haven't listened to it yet. She tells me she's got like a 6-minute and 50-second podcast that I'm going to love, that we're all going to love. It sounds too short, so let's go listen and see what that's all about. And one last thing, if I may. For President's Day, which is Monday, I'm off radio, but we have a very special broadcast, and I worked on it this week with TC. It's really great. I can't believe I never did this before. We went back through the archives and pulled the interviews that I've done with American presidents, a lot of them, you know, more than I ever anticipated. I did like 9 with Obama himself, but we pulled together bits and pieces of them. What's I think the best part are not so much what they said, but me filling in the background of what was going on when the interviews took place. You'll hear it, I hope, and I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, Here's to John Fetterman getting healthy, wish him Godspeed, and helping erase the stigma of mental health. See ya.